Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, our very first Trodat Trotec webinar, all about rubber stamps. Now, as we've said before, you guys know a lot more about stamps than we do. You are stamp makers, we know how to sell them. But we are going to give you some tips and some tricks. But first of all, we'd like to introduce Peter Kleinhans. He's our technical guru for the meeting and will be teaching you a little bit about maintenance and also about how to make deep etch rubbers later.
Hi everyone.
This is a very interactive session, or we'd like them to become interactive sessions. So if today works out, obviously we'd like to continue in the same vein as this and do more of these meetings. So if you want to ask questions, please just ask in the chat, and you can just send us your name as well. Just write there, I'm Lynn from Rubber Stamp and Engraving, hello. If there's any questions, then you can continue to ask them later, but at least we can identify who the question's coming from if you give us that first message. So, with no further ado, over to the stamps. A new stamp we've received is the round professional line 54045 or 52045. The difference between this and the stamp it replaces, which is the 5215 and 5415, is that you can use this same stamp for making both oval and round stamps. So if I show you the plate, can you see the plate has got various markings on it where you are able to position either a round or an oval stamp. So nice for positioning and nice because you don't have to have different size stamps in your stock. You can just keep this one stamp and use it for the variety of sizes. Okay, there has been information sent out on this. If you haven't received it, please let me know and we will resend it out. Okay, over to some new stamps we've been designing for you. Obviously, with COVID at the top of our minds at the moment, we are thinking of nothing else but COVID. And COVID has, in a sense, sent us some opportunities. Those of us with lasers have been able to make masks and shields, as well as some social distancing signage if necessary. So that's been very useful. But stamps are also a very useful part of this journey we're all on. We've had a very interesting situation today, or this week in fact, where our customers won't sign our invoices. They see the driver, they say thank you very much, they want to take the parcel, but they don't really want to handle the invoice. So what we've done is we've made a pocket printy for each of our drivers. This pocket printy travels with them, and on the bottom it says that it's been signed on the customer's behalf by our driver in their presence. They are able to stamp this onto the invoice and then leave, obviously, with a copy of it, and we can send the copy of the POD to the customer on the driver's return. So that's one thing. The other thing I know we're all doing is we're having our temperatures taken 20 times a day. These temperatures are then recorded in a book where we have to write our names, ID numbers, and telephone. We have again made a stamp for me, because I can't stand doing it, to stamp into these books. Very useful to carry around. And again, I did it on a pocket printy just to make it so much easier. The new pocket printy is, of course, very, very mobile. And in today's situation, where we are working from home or working at the office, and we have to move between both, having these stamps with you means a lot less clutter, but also a much more portability. So you are able to use them wherever you are simply by sliding it open, and your ink isn't going to get into your handbag, it's not going to pick up dust, it's not going to get dust from your briefcase. Very easy, very simple to use, and lovely funky colors. A nice one to offer people and actually ask them to consider the fact that we aren't sitting in offices all the time now, we are moving between the two. Okay, other ideas we've had. When a customer receives a parcel, there are certain requirements by law that we have to give our customers. And this is a series of instructions for receiving the parcel. So this could be placed, this stamp, and we have got the artwork for all of these to send to you after this webinar. This stamp sets out the instructions for receiving a parcel from us. It will include instructions like the fact that the parcel has been sanitized. It has been packed carefully, and that the driver is instructed to deliver it to you, and you are to take it, but to please be careful and to not touch the driver if possible. So really, really easy one to make. We have done the artwork for you. We will send it. We did it as a multicolor. Of course, you can just do it as a plain one if you choose to, but if you have the multicolor option, always nice because it highlights certain things and draws people's eyes to the stamp. Okay, another series of stamps we've made are these 3 little temperature gauges, which we feel will be very useful at a school. At a school, there is one thermometer usually being used to monitor the children's temperatures as they enter a gate. There could be several gates, but once the temperature is taken, the child goes off, usually to the class, and with this, you are able to stamp the child's arm with a very non-invasive stamp saying that their temperature has been taken, and if you're happy, they're going to get a green one. If there's a temperature, there's a red one, so the teacher knows to take the child to the sick room, and then the protocol of the school will then follow immediately afterwards. Our stock stamps have always been very, very popular stamps. So we're adding a new one to our range, and it's called Expertly Sanitized, which is just a nice one to add to any invoice, any product that you're sending out, to make sure that the customer understands that due concern is being given to the packing of their parcels. Okay. Right. We promised to talk about laser rubber. Laser rubber is something that we use on a daily basis, and we're all very used to using the conventional grey rubber, our Aero Plus, which is the best odorless product on the market. Not only is it not smelly, but it also engraves very, very quickly compared to other odorless rubbers. Right, so some things you may not know is we have an A3 rubber. This rubber is very, very useful for making large stamps and sometimes used for printing. And there have been quite a few requests for it in the past. We do have some stock of this A3 purely because of the requests that we get. This beautiful orange rubber is called Tempo. Tempo rubber is for making stamps very, very quickly. In other words, you are required to make 50 stamps in a hurry. You need something a little bit softer, something that will run quicker. The Tempo rubber is what you would use. The Tempo rubber can only be used with Trodat ink though. You cannot use any form of fast drying ink, no oil-based inks, definitely no alcohol-based inks. So really, really nice for quick use, but nothing other than the Trodat ink. So a normal stamping protocol only. This blue rubber here is called soft. Soft rubber is very nice if you've got a stamp with a very large surface area. So some logos, for example, have got a very, very heavy black background. And when you stamp, we know that the ink doesn't always adhere to the rubber properly and doesn't wick nicely. So this one here holds the ink very nicely, so you'll get a more solid background on your logos and big printed areas. For the eco warriors in you, we have an eco rubber. Eco rubber is made from 100% natural rubber. So if you have a customer who's particularly insistent on having eco-friendly product, of course, all the Trodat product is eco-friendly, and every single bit of recognition is given to the environment and the entire process of producing the stamp. This rubber will just complete that. So if you do have a customer who is particularly keen on the eco-friendly process, then this would be the rubber to use. Again, this rubber can only be used with normal Trodat ink, no other inks. It is not suitable for any oil, alcohol, fast drying inks. An interesting one for you is the oil-based rubber, which we call Olio, O-L-I-O. This is a black rubber that is used for oil-based inks, which is good in the printing industry. This rubber used to be particularly used for stamping of checks in the old days. So people used to make the signature and that used to stamp all the salary checks. Now there aren't any salary checks. well, salary checks, but not done in the same format anymore. So now used more for small printing runs, backup envelopes, where there's a small printing run necessary and they don't necessarily want to bake a plate. This rubber, however, needs to be watched. You cannot leave this rubber to run by itself because it does tend to flame. So safety tip, always be with your laser while you're running this and make sure your air assist is on. Right. Our aero rubber, which you are all familiar with, is the best rubber on the market, in my opinion. It is quick, it is odorless, and a characteristic that many people forget about is the fact that when our rubber lasers, the dust stays on the rubber. It doesn't actually fly off the rubber. Of course, there will be some, but not a lot. It actually stays on the surface of the rubber. Many people then come in and actually brush the rubber with a brush into the extractor. That is actually the wrong thing to do. Because when you do that, what you're doing is you're putting dust into the working parts of the laser. So best tip for this one is take it off your laser and put it into a bucket of water. A big Tupperware tray with a bit of sunlight liquid and some water and a paintbrush, and your stamps will clean very, very easily, and you will protect the most expensive asset that we are probably using in stamp making, the laser. And so your maintenance in the laser will be a lot less. But Peter's going to talk about that in a little while. So leading into that is our next topic, which is our deep etch rubber. Deep etch rubber is a 5mm rubber. This 5mm rubber allows you to make stamps for pallets, for stamping on trees, for stamping on timber, and anything where the customer doesn't want to see a background. For example, on a box, if you were stamping on a box and you had to use a normal piece of rubber, the 2.3mm one, you would get a lot of background print. This 5mm rubber allows you to have a much deeper relief. So we have made a sample and we have this rubber to show you. You can see the difference compared to a normal 2.3mm rubber. This sort of rubber would be used for a much bigger logo, a much bigger print. You would very seldom have fine print because of the surfaces that you're going to be stamping onto. So much bolder, much thicker. We always aim for a relief of about 50% down into the rubber. Whereas on this one, you're often able to get away with less because there's much more print, and so you don't get that background. Right, so Peter, we're over to you.
Right, talking about rubbers. On the standard rubber, our depth is normally around about 1.2mm. On the deep etch, we can go up to about 2.5mm. As Lynn said, that's quite handy for certain applications. Now, talking about the process of deep etch rubber, we can't run the deep etch rubber using the exact same settings as what we would use on the standard rubber. So I'm going to switch over to the computer and we can walk through some of the settings on the computer side and some of the processes that we follow when making these deep etch rubbers. Okay, so on screen you will notice our artwork for the deep etch that we used for that stamp that you just saw. Now the artwork is done exactly the same way as any of your normal rubber stamps. The main difference would come in, of course, into the material settings. So I'm going to go ahead and send it through as a normal rubber stamp. Now, of course, we have certain settings that we do. We select our materials. And when it comes to the materials, you can create a setting specifically for the deep etch rubber. In this case, we're just going to do it under the rubber settings and add deep etch to the mix. The setting that we use on our machine here at the office is a 60-watt machine. There's 100% power and between 4 and 6% of the speed. 1000 ppi to get the max out of the machine that we can. For cutting, however, we go a bit slower. So we use around about 15% power at 0.2% speed, and we would do that in multiple passes to prevent flaming. So I'm just going to set that to 2 passes. Always note that the air assist must be on for both engrave and cut to protect your optics, as well as blow any dust away in the engrave area. Of course, our stamp mode, we would select over here under process options, and then we would have our resolution. Now, it is recommended on 1000 dpi for most stamps. If it's your standard everyday stamps, your paid and not transferable type of stamps, we can go down to 500 for those. On the right hand side, we've got our shoulder. Now, steep would be a very short shoulder, and then medium would be the average one that we use. Now, the shoulder is the angle of the text or graphic on your stamp. That gives a bit more beef to the text or the graphic. In that sense, it would not go flat when you press hard on the stamp. Flat, of course, being a very wide shoulder, medium, the standard one that we always use, and then steep, very shallow. All right. From there, we're just going to send it through. Now, in job control, we change our settings once we ran our stamp. We would change our cut to skip, because what we would want is run the stamp 2 passes, but separately and cleaning in between. So we would change our setting over here. Change our cut to skip. Click OK. We run the stamp once, and then we'll come back in again afterwards and do our cut setting. However, because of the depth that we go in, we do change our focus distance on the machine itself. So after the 1 pass, we would want to first refocus on the depth of the stamp, and then of course run the 2nd pass of engraving. Hence why we don't change our passes in the software over here to 2 passes or 3 passes. Once our engraving is the desired depth, and you can always judge before you take the stamp out of the machine, you can judge if it's deep enough for you. If it's deep enough, you can then move over to the cut option. If not, you would be able to run more passes until you are happy with the cutting. Right, that would be the standard process for deep etch. I'm going to go back to the machine now. We can quickly talk about some maintenance. On the machine side itself, as Len mentioned earlier, it is very important not to brush while your stamp is inside the machine. It's very important not to brush the dust, because what happens is the dust, except for going to the extractor, it also goes into the motion system and your optic path. That dust can get baked onto your optics, and when baked onto the optics, it becomes very expensive to replace those optics. We have a lens and a mirror that's constantly exposed to the dust. These needs to be cleaned, and the more rubber you do, the more regularly you need to clean them. It's also important to follow the standard guidelines that we have in place for cleaning the machine and the optics. If you want, on our Facebook and our YouTube channel, you do have access to the webinars we've done recently regarding maintenance of the machine itself. Other parts of the machine, of course, quite important, is the motion system behind the belt. Now, when you brush your rubber stamp while inside the machine, all that dust goes inside here. In here, we've got our linear bearing, And once the dust starts going in there, it starts eating away on the bearing itself, which of course reduces the lifespan of this bearing. This, however, can be avoided. As Lynn mentioned, rather take the stamp out of the machine, clean it outside, leave the cleaning inside a bucket rather than the machine itself. Right. Other parts that we do need to monitor, on the bottom of a Speedy 300 you do have a small nose cone. This needs to be cleaned once in a while, especially when running deep edge rubber. It tends to clog with the dust, and that dust can of course heat up the whole head, causing temperature issues for your optics. Also important, at the back of the machine we've got where the extractor is sucking all the dust in. That area also needs to be cleaned regularly, and this is to avoid any reduction in your airflow. Other than that, inside the machines, of course, we also have some optics. I'm not going to go through those now, but we also have some optics on the side panels that we need to clean, and of course the linear and other motion system parts for the Z-axis. Right, I'm just going to place the optics back here. Rubber is a very dusty product. This dust can cause a lot of problems if not handled correctly. Right, that's that much for machine maintenance. And I believe we are going over to some Q&As now, if there is any questions so far. No?
So back again. Right, so we're trying to keep our webinars relatively short, sweet and simple, so we don't have you engage with us too long on a busy day, and on a Friday especially. I know you're all wanting to get home. So please let us know if this is of interest to you and if you're enjoying this sort of thing, because then we can do more. For example, we've made these today. This is a mask holder just to stop your ears from getting sore during the day of having the elastic rubbing against your ear. We've made these, we've made other items also for COVID, and if you're interested, we're very happy to show you these in another webinar on another Friday. So please let us know, and any questions, email us, we'll answer those immediately. We have had one by email before the meeting, and that one will certainly be answered straight after this meeting. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to us, and I hope it was of interest to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.